Good morning, students. Today we are going to deal with the topic objectives and setting objectives. It falls under again Unit 2 planning. So this is the fourth topic and fifth topic given in the syllabus. So we are going to see what are objectives and how are we going to set or frame the objectives for a particular organization. First, let us look into goals and then we shall move on with objectives. When we talk about goals, goals are outcome statements that define what an organization is trying to accomplish both programmatically and organizationally. When we talk about goals, say for example, let us consider Walmart company as one of the example for it. Okay, in that case, if you are going to talk in terms of goals, Walmart might state a financial goal of growing its revenue 20% per year would be one of the goals for that company, or to have a goal of growing the international parts of its empire, like spreading its parts in different countries would be called as goals. Okay, when we talk about objectives, in contrast to the goals, objectives are very precise, time-based, measurable actions that support the completion of the goal. So when we talk about goal, it might be the time span for achieving the goal could be many years, which means it will run for a longer period of time. It could be 10 years or even more than 5 years or 20 years also, depending on the goals which are set or framed by the organization. Objectives are those that helps in achieving the particular goal set by the organization. So when we talk about objectives in terms of the same example that we saw now for Walmart, okay, the goal is growing the international parts of this empire, like spreading that organization across different countries. So the objective for that example will be in support of the company's 20% revenue growth goal. One objective might be open 20 new stores within 6 months or within 1 year. That would be the objective. Like what are the steps that are taken to achieve the goal? Those will be called as objectives. The objectives could be for organization, objective could be for department, or objective could be for a particular employee. All these we saw in plans itself. We had something called as strategic planning as a top level planning, and then we had something called as tactic planning, and then we had something called as operational planning, and then we had departmental or individual plans. So all these are applicable for objectives also. We do have something called as goals, which are set by the organization, like more like a vision of the organization. The objectives are nothing but the steps, or the objective is something correlated with the mission of the organization. How are we going to achieve the goals that are set? So objectives should be precise, time-based, measurable actions that support the completion of a goal. Any number of objectives could be taken into account for achieving a particular goal of an organization. Okay, we could see the differences with the examples itself. It is about for goal, it is about growing the organization, whereas objective, it is specifically we are going to give the numbers, like opening 20 stores or opening 100 stores within a few years or a few months. Okay, so objectives should typically consist of clear, concise, and understandable set, or it could be related directly to the goal, and it should begin with an action verb. Say for example, to do this particular task, to open 20 new stores. All these are action verbs, isn't it? To do. So there is an action verb there. So any objective should begin with an action verb. It should be directly correlated with the goal, related to the goal. I cannot have an objective that is away from the goal. Every objective in the organization, or every objective even at the department level or unit level, should be directly related to the goal. It should somewhere help in achieving the goal. So it should be related directly to the goal. It should be stated in terms of results. It should be clear, concise, and understandable. And it should begin with an action verb. It should specify a date for accomplishment. Like I said, goal, it will run for years, whereas objective, I'm going to mention it within a short span of time. Be it for a department also, I'm going to mention the time, like within a year. That time frame should be set, and it should be achieved within that time frame. Whereas for goal, it need not be an accurate time span. It could be an approximate time span. For objective, it should be an accurate time span that should be given. Okay. Then followed by, it should be measurable. We are going to assess the objectives. While planning itself, we are going to think about the objectives, and we are going to have the techniques or algorithm to measure them. Okay, after we achieve or attain the objective, we are going to have the actual measurements, and then we are going to compare that with this and see if there are any deviations. Okay, these are about the introduction to goals and objectives. So this is a diagram in terms of time horizon and in terms of functions. So first is vision and mission of the organization. Okay, then we have something called as strategic goals and objectives. When we talk about objectives, I have told it could be strategic objectives, or it could be departmental objectives, or it could be unit objectives or individual objectives also, which means the objective that is given to each and every employee in an organization. So the first is about vision and mission of the organization as such. There will be only one vision, and then followed by strategic goals and objectives. Strategic goal could be one or many also, okay, depending on the organization, and we are going to have a collection of objectives. Then followed by operating goals and objectives. So the last level is all about the departmental, individual, and then all the tactical operating goals also. We had something called as backup plan, isn't it? Contingency objectives. Even that could be that could be added in the second level and the third level. Contingency objectives, which means contingency plan. If one objective is not being met, what is the other one that could be made, so that it is related to the goal and it helps in achieving the goal. So when you look at the time horizon, the mission and vision and mission, it will take a longer time, so it is relatively long. When you look at the bottom, it is relatively short, which means it is something like individual objectives or unit objectives. It could be achieved within a month also, within few days or within few months. So relatively short. The time duration for achieving the operational goals and objectives will be relatively shorter, or it will take relatively less time compared to the other top level objectives. On the right hand side, we have something called as function or arena specificity, which means the vision and mission is relatively broad, which means it is going to cover here the strategic goals and objectives, or vision and mission is spread across all the departments in the organization. It is for the organization as a whole. Okay, when we talk about the operational goals, or individual goals, or a team goals, divisional goals, or departmental goals, all those are specific to a particular department, specific to a particular unit, isn't it? So they are relatively specific. Like I said, we do have vision and mission for CSE department. That is different from the vision and mission of the ECE department. Those are specific to the CSE and ECE departments respectively. When we talk about the vision and mission of the college, it is for all the departments. So they are relatively broad. They are going to talk in terms of the engineering courses. Whereas when we talk about the relatively specific objectives, like relatively specific vision and mission to the departments, it will be focusing on the courses related to the CSE department. What will be the outcome if you are going to learn all those subjects that come under CSE program? Okay, so these are relatively broad. At the top level, the objectives are at a broader level, and the lower level objectives are specific based on the division they are falling under. And then we are going to look into nature of objectives. When we talk about nature of objectives, the first point is objectives have an hierarchy. Like we saw in the previous diagram, see, we have something called a strategic, and then we have operating goals and objectives, isn't it? We are going to see a broader hierarchy now. Okay. Then we do have something called as objectives form a network. So as I said, there will be n number of objectives to achieve a particular goal. All these should be correlated in order to achieve the goal. So they form a network. Then we have multiplicity of objectives, because we are going to have different objectives for different departments. So all these work together. So these are multiple objectives. Then fourth one, it should have a time span. And the fifth point is objectives can be tangible objectives or intangible objectives. I'll give you a few examples for that. And then the fifth point, the sixth point is objectives must have social sanction, which means it should be benefit to the society, or it should meet the general needs of the society. So we are going to see these in detail now. The first point is objectives have a hierarchy. So this is how the hierarchy of objectives are given. The first one is socio-economic purpose. Okay, what is the purpose that we are getting into this particular goal, or why do we set this goal? Why are we setting this goal? Then followed by the mission. Mission is the to-do list to achieve that particular objective. Okay, then we have something called as overall objective of the organization. And so it will be all about the strategic objective. Then at the fourth level, it is more specific overall objective. Okay, look at the word, it is more specific, but then they have something called as overall objective. So it is nothing but these are the objective in key result areas. Already that day I gave you few examples for key result area. Let me give mark that again now. Okay, then we have something called as divisional objectives and department and unit objectives, followed by the individual objectives. Here we are going to talk about the performance and personal development objective. So these are the different levels of objectives in an organization. And on the right hand side, we have the team or people who are responsible for all these objectives. When I say responsible, they are the people who set or frame these objectives, and they are the ones responsible to achieve those objectives. So when you look at the board of directors, okay, they are the management people, isn't it? So socio-economic purpose, mission, and the overall objective of the organization, all these three are set by the board of directors. Obviously they are going to look into the society market demands, and then they are going to set the overall objective, and then they are going to have the mission of the organization. Being employees, they are not given any point in setting the overall objective of the organization. Okay, then we have top level managers. They will be involved in those three. Again, they also involved in something called as more specific, which means key result areas. These top level managers are also involved in this overall objective, because they might provide assistance to the board of directors when this overall objective of the organization is set, because they are the technical people, so they'll have an hand in the setting the overall objectives. And then we have something called as a category called as middle level managers. They are responsible for the objectives, overall objectives in the key result area, and the divisional objectives and departmental objectives. So say for example, if the overall objective could be split into three categories, those are the divisional objectives, and then those three objectives are again further split into different objectives based on the different departments. So that is being split, and it is given, or it is escalated to the different departments, so that the work is being done by those departments. Okay, and then we have another category called as lower level managers. So these are the managers who work as department heads or employees in the divisional, in the different divisions. Okay, so they are responsible for setting the department objectives and the unit objectives and individual objectives. When we talk about department, say for example, we do have something called a CRC department in our college, isn't it? When we talk about unit objectives in that, it could be say for example a club which is running in the CRC department, or it could be the TIC, talent intelligence group, running in the department. Those are the different units. So these units have objectives, okay, that will be related to the departmental objectives. We do have something called as publication team, project team, research team. So all these teams will work in correlation with the department objectives. And we do have something called as individual objectives. So what are the roles and responsibilities given to the employees in the department? In our case, it is the role and responsibility of each and every faculty in the department. So all these are set by the lower level managers. So this is the hierarchy of objectives, and these four category of people are the people who are responsible for framing the objectives and also for achieving those objectives. The same diagram is given in a different way. So again, the same points are repeated, ma. So when we talk about, say for example, we were discussing about the goals and objective definitions, isn't it? So when we talk about goals and objective, a simple example could be, we can think of goal to be an umbrella with multiple or several spokes, okay, coming out from the center. We know in umbrella we have several spokes coming out from the center. The entire umbrella is considered as the goal, and the different spokes that are coming out of the umbrella are the objectives. So without, see, we need all the spokes to work so that we use the umbrella in a better way. So without specific objectives, the general goal could not be accomplished, just like umbrella cannot be put down or put up without using all the spokes. So this is how we differentiate the goal and objectives in the organization. So in regard to the objectives, as an hierarchy, generally a top level management of an organization assigns a part of mission to a particular department, and then the mission is again subdivided into few parts and then assigned among different sections or units and individuals. This process creates an hierarchy of objectives. So objectives at all levels in the organization should be interrelated, and they are said to form a network. So this is what is the second point. Objectives are said to form a network. So when we talk about hierarchy, we do have another important point. We have two approaches in which the hierarchy could be explained. The first one is top-down approach, and the second one is bottom-up approach. So, see, in case of top-down approach, senior managers set the objectives based on the needs of the organization. So they are going to look into the market demands, okay, and then the goal of the organization, they are going to set the objectives, and then they are going to pass it down to the lower level. So this is called the top-down approach. This is what we are dealing with in the hierarchy of objectives. Then the second approach is bottom-up approach. Here the senior managers ask the lower level managers to set objectives for their units and send them to the top level for review and approval. So in bottom level, it is like getting the opinion from the lower level managers, because they are the people who actually do the technical work. So we are going to get the feedback from them and then analyze, and then we are going to set a better objective that works well. So this is called as bottom-up approach. Both these objectives have advantages as well as disadvantages. So to utilize both the advantages, or to utilize the advantages of both of these techniques, a combination of these could be followed. So we do have something called as review. So it is better to have a top-down approach, and also to get the feedback from the lower level managers or from the departments and the individual employees. So these are the two approaches that are involved in framing the objectives. So this is the example given how it works: bottom-up functions and top-down functions. So when you look on the right hand side, it is top-down functions. So first, it is at the international level. So we are going to talk about the principles, agreements, commitment, and the financial resources available. As I said, we are going to look into the market demands, goal of the organization, and the resources that are currently available. Okay, then at the second level, we have nation level policy strategies. So we all know at the second level, after the vision and mission of the organization is set, we are going to talk in terms of strategic goal. Okay, strategic goals and strategic objectives. Here we do have something called as policies, strategies, legislation, and other instruments, financial resources. Again, here also we are going to talk about financial resources in terms of the strategic goals and objectives that are set. Here we set the policies that should be followed, rules and regulations that need to be followed throughout the organization. And at the last bottom level, it is about the activities and the projects that are actually being implemented. So this is how the top-down approach works. So we are going to talk in terms of the agreements, principles, overall goal, and then in terms of policy, strategic goals, and then we are going to talk about the projects. Okay. Whereas in bottom up, the first thing we are going to look at the bottom level. Okay. So we are going to collect the needs and also the feedback and also the creative ideas from the lower level managers. And then we are going to take them to the top level managers. Okay, then we are going to correlate that with the vision and mission of the organization, and then we are going to create the strategic plan, and then we are going to analyze that, compare that with the goal, or even from the lower level managers feedback and needs, we can set the strategic goal, and then we can set the goal for the organization also, in either way. So this is how the bottom up and top level, top down approaches work. So it another example given here. So this is all about the first point. Objectives have an hierarchy. The second point is objectives form a network. So if objectives are not interconnected by a network, then it may not support one another, because we are going to have a number of objectives to achieve the overall objective, isn't it? So an objective formed by one department it may seem good for them, okay, but might not be suitable for the other departments, and it might not work well to the company as a whole. So the top level management makes sure that all these objectives at the lower level and at the middle level work in correlation, so that it forms a network and we can achieve the overall objective effectively. So this is all about the second point. In hierarchy itself, we have justified this point. Objectives do form a network. Then the third point is all about multiplicity of objectives. When we talk about multiplicity of objectives, say for example, let us consider education institution as example. Okay, in that case, what will be the main objectives? The main objective will be education and research. In any educational institution or an university, providing education and doing research will be the main objectives, isn't it? We should not just stop with those two objectives. We should also look into providing training and placement for the students, providing excellent infrastructure, and interacting with the industries. That is one of the important thing, because though we train the students, okay, they should get placed in better companies. So we should have interaction with the industries, collaborating with the industries. Okay, we can even get the projects from the industries and make students do the project in the pre-final years and final years, if it is feasible for them. Then discovering and organizing knowledge through research, and we can even conduct FDPs, faculty development programs, and workshops to enhance the skills of the faculty members and students. So these are the other objectives that should be considered. Okay, in spite of having the main objectives, we do have other objectives. So these are the multiplicity of objectives. Okay, so they differ. Objectives should have a time span. So we do have something called as long-term objectives and short-term objectives. The objectives that could be achieved within a year or within few months, those falls under short-term objectives, whereas others that could be achieved over a long period of time are called as long-term objectives. Anyways, these short-term objectives help in achieving the long-term objectives because they are correlated, because they do have an hierarchy and they form a network. So we have something called as short-term objectives and long-term objectives. We are going to talk about these two definitions under this point, and we are going to have this time span so that we can assess the objectives in a better way. So we need to mention the time span when we are setting the objectives. And we do, the fifth point is about tangible and intangible objectives. So when we talk about tangible objectives, they include achievement of materially quantifiable targets or goals. Okay. When we talk in terms of intangible objectives, it could be company's image, employees' moral, personal development, etc. Again, and let me repeat, tangible objectives include achievement of materially quantifiable targets or goals, whereas intangible objectives are something related to company's image, personal development of the employees, okay, employee moral, etc. Then the last point is objectives must have social sanction. Since organizational or social units, their objectives must conform to the general needs or demands of the society. So these are about the nature of the objectives. So with this, the objective topic is over. So the fifth topic in the syllabus is Setting objectives. Why do we set these objectives? As I've already told, after setting the goal, we need to have something called as objectives. We have different categories of objectives. All these should be framed properly so that after implementation, we should not regret for setting that objective. And these should work in correlation with the goals, vision, mission of the organization. So, an objective means an assignment, series of assignments or parts thereof that must be done in a certain way by the planned deadline. So time span is very, very important. Accurate time frame should be specified while setting the objectives. So there are three categories of objectives here. So these are the broad categories of objectives. So look at this slide. The first one is operating objectives, second key objectives, and the third one is milestones. So the first one, operating objectives. The primary purpose of operating objectives is planning and arranging the daily activities of the employees. So what should be the work of an employee and what should be the roles and responsibilities of the managers, lower level managers and the top level managers. So we are going to set the workload for them. The second one is all about milestones and key objectives. So let's have a look at the key objectives and then move on with the milestone. So key objectives, very important, high priority employee task, including objectives that aim at achieving the set targets. So the third one is, so it is all about a particular area. That day I was talking about the key result areas, isn't it? So we are going to talk in terms of profits, we are going to talk in terms of resources, and all those are the key result areas in an organization. When we talk about milestones, they are the checkpoints that mark the key project events. So we are going to analyze how far we are achieving our objectives with the help of milestones. Even before we achieve the objective as a whole, with the help of milestones, we will be able to assess the objectives. Guidelines for setting objectives. So what are the points to be considered while setting or framing the objectives? So first point it could be, so when you look at the first point in the slide, it is let the people responsible for attaining the objectives have a voice in setting them. Which means they are talking about the employees who are involved. It is just not the top level managers who should be involved in setting the objectives. The choice should also be given to the lower level managers and the middle level managers who are actually working in achieving or attaining these objectives. So that is the first point. The second point is state objective as specifically as possible. Okay, so it is a departmental objective, means it should be specific to the department. If you are giving an objective to an employee, setting an objective for an employee, it should be specific to his own skill sets, or we are going to train them and then assign this objective to that employee. Okay, then only it will work well. Third one, relate objectives to specific actions whenever necessary. Fourth point, pinpoint expected results. So we are going to talk about the expected results while setting the objectives itself. Then set goals high enough that employees have to strive to meet them. Okay, but not so high that employees give up trying to meet them. Okay, it should be feasible for them. It should be feasible for them to achieve the goals. We can have a complicated goal also, but make sure that the employees are rigorously trained in that field. Okay, so they should not give up trying them. Specify when goals are expected to be achieved. So this is about the time frame. Then set objectives only in relation to the other organizational objectives. So we should not deviate from the organizational objectives. State objectives clearly and in a simple way. So these are the basic guidelines for setting objectives. So the other general guidelines could be objectives should cover the main features of the job. Okay, objectives should be clearly specified in writing. It should be in a document. It should not be conveyed in an oral meeting. It should be available in a document so that if there are any doubts among the employees, they can refer the document and see to it. That is why we do have something called as vision and mission of the department and college being displayed on the notice board and even in the classrooms. Hope you all had a look at all those vision and mission. So it is because it is always better to have in writing so that whenever we want to have a look, we can have a look at it. Okay, it should not be disseminated in an oral way. Then, the list of objectives should not be too long. It should be specific. Then objectives must be set by considering the various factors affecting their achievement. So as I said, they should be rigorously trained and then they should be given with the complicated task. Okay. Then objective should be verifiable. This is what is given here. So when we make the objective, when we generate or when we are going to frame the objective, we should make sure that they could be assessed. Okay. So objectives should be verifiable. After we achieve them, we are going to assess them. Then objectives should clearly indicate the organizational mission, obviously. Then objectives should be challenging and reasonable. Then objectives should yield specific results when achieved. So these are the extra points. These are not given in the prescribed textbook. I'm just giving additional points that could be retained under guidelines. Okay. If you want, I'll repeat all these points again. Objectives should provide timely feedback so that the necessary corrective action could be taken. So that is why we do have something called as review, periodic review. And then we have something called as short-term objectives. Okay, short-term objectives should be consistent with the long-term objectives. Obviously, this is what we saw in the types itself. Then objective should start with the word to and it should be followed by an action, which means we are going to follow the action verbs. Then action verb should be there in the objectives. Objectives should be periodically reviewed. So again, this point is repeated again. Objectives should clearly indicate the resources and authority required for achieving it. So we are going to have the team and tell who is responsible for which activity or which objective. So all the objectives or assumptions, all the assumptions underlying the objectives should be clearly identified and it should be disseminated to the particular team which is involved in this particular task. So these are the general guidelines in setting the objectives. So the few main points again, let me repeat the key points alone. Okay, we should state the objective as specifically as possible. We should pinpoint the expected results, which means objectives should be verifiable. Objectives should be identified clearly. They should be defined in a simple way so that everybody understands it. And when we have something called as short-term objectives, they should be consistent with the long-term objectives. And we should follow action verbs when we are writing the objectives. And objectives should be in a document. It should be documented. It should be in a written form. And objectives should be challenging and reasonable. And they should clearly indicate the organizational mission and also they should work in correlation with the organizational goal. So these are the main points that should be covered in setting the objectives. So one of the golden rule, in spite of all these, in addition to all these guidelines, we do have one more guideline which is called the golden rule. So we are going to have a smarter objectives. So we are going to set SMART objectives. The SMART here, S stands for specific, M for measurable, A for attainable or achievable. Okay, different textbooks use different terms here. So it is either attainable or achievable. Then R stands for relevant, T for time bound. So when we talk about the word specific, it ensures that there is no ambiguity in the objective. So which means we are going to have a clear objective based on the resources available. Okay, we are also going to have a specific outcome that should be accomplished along with this objective. Then second one, it is measurable. We are going to see how it could be measured. If it cannot be measured, it will be very difficult to assess or verify the objective. So we are going to see what are the techniques and algorithms that are needed, required for measuring. So we are going to consider all those and then set the objective. And then the third point is attainable or achievable. Is it actually possible to achieve the objective? So when we talk about this, we are not just going to stop thinking whether it is possible to achieve or attain the objective. We are going to tell that in terms of market demands, time period, and resources allocated. Whenever we make a plan or frame or set an objective or a goal, we are going to consider three criteria: market conditions, time period, and the resources available. So When we talk about attainable or achievable attribute, we are going to see, is it actually possible to achieve the objectives in a given market condition or a market field demand in time period and the available resources? So this is how we are going to think when we are setting an objective. The fourth criteria, or the fourth attribute in SMART objective is relevant. Does the objective meet the long-term activities or long-term goal of the organization or not? So we are going to make the short term objectives in relevant to the long term objectives or the goal of the organization. The fifth point is time bound. It means clearly stating when all these objectives will be achieved, or in specific to a particular objective we are going to talk, means it we are going to specify when that particular objective will be achieved or attained, the time frame. Okay, so the golden rule is set SMART objectives, the objectives that are specific, those could be measurable, those are achievable or attainable, those are relevant to the goal of the organization, or those are relevant to the vision and mission of the organization, and those are time bound, okay, which have specific time frame. So these are all about the guidelines in achieving, or guidelines in setting the objectives. Then we are going to talk in terms of aligning teams and organizational objectives. How about we going to align the teams? So we do have the different levels. The first level is all about why. So why are we doing? What are we doing? So it is all about our vision and purpose, which means your why refers to, or why so gives a solution about what is the vision and mission of the organization. Why this is the vision, or why these are the steps taken to achieve the vision. We are going to talk in terms of purpose. The second level is what. So what do we need to fulfill the intended purpose? Intended purpose is nothing but the vision and mission here. Okay, so what do we need? So it is all about the resources, ma. The third level is how. How exactly are we going to do what needs to be done? So here it is all about the business plan priorities, agree corporate objectives, and the different teams that are involved, different team objectives and their workload. And the fourth is about who. So who is going to make sure it is done? The team, individuals, and the partners. So these are the different levels, or these are the different category of questions. So all these questions are is applicable at all levels, but then here it is correlated with the, this why is correlated with the top level, and what and how is correlated with the top level and the middle level manager, and who is correlated with the low level manager. But then we can correlate all of these questions at each and every level in an organization, so that we have a better objective hierarchy and better objective network. Though we have set a particular objective or a set of objectives so effectively, how are we going to align them among the teams? So this is very, very important. So we need to have solution to all these questions at different levels. Areas of objective setting. So where all we can set this objectives. All these same we were dealing with the guidelines. How do we, what are the points that to be taken into account when we are setting the objectives? And the second one is all about how are we going to align the teams? How are we going to work in cooperation among the teams? Okay, here it is all about areas of objective setting, which means where all, in which all areas we should focus in objective setting, or these objectives should be set in which areas in an organization. So according to this, we are going to have the set of areas that are given by Peter Drucker. Okay, Peter Drucker has emphasized areas for which an organization must set its objective. So it should be in market. Based on market, we are going to have an objective. Okay, marketing team, and a different objective for a marketing team, and innovation, productivity. Based on the resources available, we are going to have a objective. And profitability, we are going to consider the manager's performance and development, worker skills, attitude and development, and also public responsibility, which means we are going to have a good impact in the society. So we are going to look into all these areas and then set the objectives. So these are the areas, key areas. This is what I was mentioning it as key result areas. Let me again go back to that point and tell you. So when you look at this diagram, the fourth point is all about more specific and overall objectives. So more specific and overall objective is nothing but objectives in key result areas. See, look at the fourth step. So more specific overall objectives, example in key result areas. So what are the key result areas? This is what is given by Peter Drucker. So these are few of the examples of key result areas which are considered by Peter Drucker. He is a person who is main who conceptualized something called as managing by objectives, which is MBO. So that will be the next topic we are going to deal with. So he is a main person who has given concepts about guidelines of objective setting and the areas of objective setting. So whenever we talk about objective setting, it is a difficult task because it involves multiple factors. But the three criteria that are very important are objective. We are going to check whether objectives are consistent with the goals of the organization, and the second point is that it should pinpoint the organizational strengths and weaknesses. The third is it should specify or satisfy the external environmental factors. So these are the main criteria that should be focused, and these are the other key result areas. Okay, now we are going to see benefits of objective setting. So this is the last topic of today's session. So when we talk about benefits of objective setting, the first is uh, objectives set specific targets for the employee to achieve, which are obviously linked to the business goals or the overall goals of the organization. So they set the specific targets for the employees. And the second point is it provides direction for the employee. So based on the objectives set only, the employees are going to start with their task allotted. The third point is it states how the performance of the employee is to be measured to assess the progress. The progress here is all about the progress of the department as well as progress of the organization. So objectives helps in measuring the performance of the employees. Okay. Then it increases staff motivation. It allows progress, targets, and successes to be monitored and measured by the manager. Then fifth point or sixth point here is it helps to build working relationship between employee and manager. The last point is it helps to focus on a specific task. When we are going to talk in terms of a individual objective, it is about a specific task, or if it is about a department objective also, it is about a task that should be achieved by the department as a whole. So in objective setting, we saw about the definition and then the three types of objectives and guidelines followed by the golden rule, and then how are we going to align the teams and the key result areas, benefits of objective setting. So with this, the fifth topic in the syllabus is over. When we talk about examples of objective setting, it could be like maximizing the net profit, or maximizing the company's net assets, or provide service to the community, or be a market leader by introducing new products. All these are few of the examples of setting objectives. Okay. If you have any doubts, you can ask Ma.